Hello, beautiful human, and welcome back to Inner Space. I'm Danielle YS, former NASA researcher turned AI software engineer, and now your guide for the edge of the unknown. This is where we explore what happens when we stop controlling our way through change and start listening to what's trying to emerge naturally. Inner Space is where discomfort becomes a doorway and the unknown becomes home. Let's explore. This is a talk on learning to cross, an introduction to what I like to call threshold fluency. And in this session, I'm walking you through the essential skills to meet any threshold, whether that is a loss, a becoming, an identity shift, without flinching and without armor. Because most of the high achieving women that I talk to who are going through change are keeping busy, even when they just want to do nothing. They're pursuing more knowledge, more planning, more research so that they can feel productive when things feel out of their control. They're feeling burnt out because they've been pushing through uncertainty. And let's face it, there is more uncertainty in our world every single day. That's why it's so important to learn how to move through uncertainty with a sense of curiosity, presence, and adventure. Just because there's uncertainty doesn't mean that we stop living. So I've seen a lot of burnout, disillusionment, feeling unsatisfied, moving through change in the same way over and over again. This is the first time they haven't been able to figure out what the next step is. Usually they can figure it out by thinking harder, working more, pushing through, but there's something different about this next threshold. If you're feeling any of these ways or have felt any of these ways before, you're not lost. You're crossing. I'm Danielle YS. I am a threshold guide, and I teach high achieving women how to meet change with presence, curiosity, and a sense of adventure by developing what I call threshold fluency. I come to you in a space now where I get to geek out on what I love every single day with my clients and with the work that I do. And that is the possibility and the potential that live within the unknown. And I get to share that journey with other people so that they can come back to their whole selves and choose a life that actually is aligned with what they want to be doing and not just the path that somebody else has tread and told them to follow. It wasn't always this way for me. I remember at the end of college, I was following somebody else's path and powering through change. I was pivoting careers. I was moving and throwing myself into work, staying busy and attempting to do everything right. What I wanted for my life was to do great things, to help change the world for the better, and to also enjoy it at the same time. But at that time, I was far from that. Even though my life was on track, I was doubting my path. Even though everybody said that I was destined to do great things, I had checked all the boxes, but I was so deeply unfulfilled, and I started to have panic attacks. But all I knew was to hold it together and keep pushing through. So that's what I did, even though it felt like the wrong thing every single moment. One day on the subway, I couldn't hold it together anymore. I broke down in front of 50 strangers. It was in that moment that I knew I had to change something. So I started on my journey into threshold fluency. I started to learn to lean into the uncomfortable emotions that were screaming at me rather than push them aside and cover them with a smile. I learned how to listen to my body so that it didn't have to scream to get my attention. And one action at a time, I began to trust myself rather than trusting my self-doubt. And day by day, I started to align my life with what I actually wanted to do. I got clearer and clearer on what I cared about. And I chose to follow what I knew to be true all along, but hadn't actually accepted when I was on someone else's path. Think back to a time when you doubted your path, even if it looked great on paper. Think back to a time when you checked all the boxes but still felt unfulfilled, even disillusioned. How many of you feel like there's gotta be a different way to move through change and to move through life itself? Most high achievers are doing exactly what I did, trying to control our way through change. We're doers, we're fixers, we're action takers. So when we face change and there's discomfort in the change, we try to fix it. It's our normal way of doing things. And society has told us that fixing things is good. Being proactive is good. We learn more, we plan more, we work more, we do more. And this is what I call the high achievers more loop. We're taking action to change the discomfort, to get out of the discomfort of the unknown. And just like a boat on its mooring, we are mooring ourselves. MOREING. When we are mooring ourselves, we're stuck in safe harbor. We're taking action to fix things, and it feels productive. It may even look productive, but what we're really doing is spinning in circles around that mooring. And we're doing it because being in the discomfort of change doesn't feel safe for us. That's why we want to stay in safe harbor, in the familiarity of taking action. So what I want to introduce to you today is threshold fluency. This is a new model of moving through change. Threshold fluency is getting comfortable with the discomfort that is inherent in the unknown so that we can unmoor ourselves and start to move out into open ocean where, yes, there is uncertainty. Yes, there is discomfort, and your whole self is waiting there. Because in safe harbor, we can't dive deep into the waters. It's not that deep to begin with. But as we start to float out into open ocean, open seas, that's where we can really dive deep into ourselves, uncovering ourselves, uncovering our direction, and learning what really matters to us. And yes, along the way, we find our next step. This is threshold fluency. It's not about figuring out what your next step is. That is a byproduct of learning threshold fluency. Threshold fluency is actually about learning to live, because every single crossing is practice for the next one, whether it's a small crossing or whether it's a big crossing. When you learn to meet the small thresholds with presence, curiosity, and a sense of adventure, you're building the only capacity that will ever truly matter. When every single one of us gets to that last crossing, when we leave our bodies, we can show up in the same way with presence, curiosity, and a sense of adventure. Threshold fluency sounds like a big amorphous blobby thing, and there are 3 fluencies or forgotten skills that make up threshold fluency. Today we're going through each of those 3 most important pieces of building threshold fluency to give you a sense of what this looks like as a journey. The first fluency that makes up threshold fluency is the discomfort advantage. One of the biggest problems we face when we're going through change is that change is uncomfortable, and we are biological beings. We're animals at the end of the day who are wired to move away from discomfort because discomfort is linked in our brains as not being safe, as danger. So most of us tend to move away from discomfort, and high achievers specifically take action when discomfort is here. Like I said before, we assume that discomfort is a problem. So as high achievers, as action takers, we take action to fix it because that's what we've been taught to do. And that's how we've survived in the past. When we're taking action to get away from the discomfort, we're really just mooring ourselves and spinning in circles, using our fuel to move us, but we're not actually moving anywhere. The key here is that discomfort is not the problem. It's the path. Discomfort is not the problem, it's the path. Fluency came to me from when I was doing research at NASA and I was studying the origins of evolution, activating evolutionary pathways in algae by applying stress or discomfort to them. When the algae didn't have any stress, they didn't change. When they had too much stress, the algae died. But right in the middle, they had enough stress to activate their evolutionary pathways. That's when things started to change. We tend to be on one side or the other of the spectrum, either overstressing ourselves by doing too much and we get into that state of burnout, or we're staying so far away from discomfort that nothing is changing. We're mooring ourselves and staying in that safe harbor. That's why discomfort isn't a problem. It's actually the pathway. Without discomfort, we can't evolve. Without discomfort, we can't change. But if you have too much discomfort, you're going to shut down. And if you have too little discomfort, nothing is going to change. With the discomfort advantage, we can see discomfort as a signal that you're at a threshold that you are being asked to cross. I said earlier, some crossings are big, some crossings are small. Anytime that you experience discomfort, that's a threshold. That's an invitation into some new way of being. It's an invitation to practice crossing for those bigger thresholds. But when we avoid discomfort by taking action, mooring ourselves, we're interrupting the process that's designed to help us transition. I remember when I was working with one of my clients, Kat, she was really overwhelmed with work, with her relationship, with her family, and she felt like she really just needed a place to rest and rejuvenate and come back to herself. So she went to her favorite place, the beach. Unfortunately, it was a very busy day at the beach, and so she couldn't find parking. She drove back and forth for 30 minutes. At some point, she just gave up, stopped her car in the middle of the parking lot, and started sobbing. She couldn't leave the car because she didn't have a place to park. All she did was cried for 15 minutes and then went home. She told me this story, and I said, Kat, it sounds like you actually got exactly what you needed. Space to cry. Space to be in discomfort. When she heard that, everything shifted. She felt lighter, clearer, calmer, and supported. The universe had her back, even if it wasn't in the way that she thought she wanted it. When you can see discomfort as direction and stop avoiding it and just let it be there, we can stop circling and start satisfying. Also start feeling supported in our lives, which I know that so many of us high achievers don't necessarily feel. Have you ever resisted an uncomfortable emotion, sadness, anger, and at some point it just burst out of you and you felt better and clearer after? That's the discomfort advantage at work. When we let ourselves be in that discomfort rather than pushing it away, we clear things out so that whatever comes next is more obvious to us. The discomfort advantage is this idea that discomfort isn't the problem, it's the path. It's the path to our next evolution, and it is the invitation to our crossing. Skill number 2 is what I like to call the somatic compass. In our society, we trust our minds over our bodies. We also put our minds and our intellects much higher than our bodies and our body wisdom. We tend to think our way through change. We ignore signals that we've been overdoing it. And oftentimes that leads us to burnout as another scream from our bodies. This is a mistake because our mind's job is literally to create thoughts, and it tends to go in rabbit holes. This is what I call mind mooring. We're spinning around that mooring in our head over and over again without actually getting anywhere. We ruminate. When we do this, is detouring. You're crossing. It's bringing you in all the different places that you could go, except for the one that you were meant to go in. Because your body doesn't spiral, it points, and it doesn't lie. So many high achievers, because we have found success in masculine society, we prioritize the mind, usually to the detriment of the body. We try to fix it by thinking our way through, figuring it out, ruminating, and then we become exhausted because it's not getting us anywhere. If this goes on for long enough, we receive a wake-up call from the body, usually burnout. Maybe it's a sickness. Maybe we get injured. And that's when our body is saying, please listen to me again. The kicker here is that most of us don't do it. Or maybe we learn to listen to our bodies for a little bit, and then once we go back into society where the mind is king or queen, we forget about the signals of the body. When we can learn the language of the body, we get access to immediate truth and direction. As we listen to the body, we create spaciousness to receive the wisdom and hidden messages that are living in our bodies and directing us every single day. How many of you have ever been trying to figure something out and you spend minutes, maybe hours, banging your head on the wall? And then the moment that you focus on something else, you get instantaneous insight and the answer. That's the somatic compass at work. Your body doesn't spiral, it points. We just have to learn the language of the body to be able to listen to the somatic compass and identify the direction that we are meant to be going in. Our first fluency is the discomfort advantage. Discomfort isn't the problem, it's the path. Our second fluency is the somatic compass. Your body doesn't spiral, it points. These together look like or feel like discomfort is the signal that you're at a threshold. The somatic compass or your body is your inner GPS, basically telling you which direction you need to go in next for your own unique path. And then we get to our third fluency, whole self trust. One of the biggest obstacles that I see with my clients who are moving through change and transition is self-doubt. We question ourselves, we question our truth, we question our path because something outside of us tells us that's not the right thing. When we have this self-doubt, we tend to look for answers, direction, and validation outside of ourselves. This is a mistake because, again, it causes us to move in circles. We're pleasing, we're proving, we're pushing, but we're not actually following our own unique path. We're following somebody else's. We're checking off the boxes on somebody else's checklist that we were told was going to be our key to success, our key to happiness. But guess what? We're still disillusioned. We're still unfulfilled. And maybe we're facing this threshold of burnout, of exhaustion, of wondering why we're even doing any of this in the first place. For whole self-trust, I like to say meaning isn't out there, and it never was. Meaning is within us. Meaning is something that we go and uncover for and within ourselves. We can go on a hero's journey, go to a million different places, have this crazy adventure outside of ourselves, but at the end of the hero's journey, they always come home. They always return home in order to find the meaning. Now, with the heroine's journey, we start and we go inside the whole time. You can take either path, but at the end of the day, it's all about going within yourself and learning to trust your whole self. I remember when I was in school and thinking about pivoting my path, moving from science research into technology, I saw a bridge. I wanted to do genomics. I knew that we needed computers and technology to be able to handle that amount of data. When I went to talk to my advisor about that, she scoffed at me and said, "How are those two things related at all?" Though in that moment, I wanted to follow the tried and true path that she had done, PhD, go do research, all the things. I knew somewhere inside of me that wasn't the path for me. Even though she couldn't see that bridge was being placed for me, I knew it was there and I knew that I could follow it. How many of you have ever had someone say, "I don't understand what you're doing"? How many of you have either chosen to disregard your whole self-trust or followed it, regardless of what other people have said? How many people in history have taken that second path, chosen their own knowing and truth, and changed history because they took that path? These are the three fluencies that are essential for developing threshold fluency. The discomfort advantage. Discomfort is not the problem, it's the path. The somatic compass. Your body doesn't spiral, it points. And whole self trust. Meaning isn't out there and it never was. What's your biggest takeaway from our time together so far? Discomfort not being the problem. It's the key. Yes, exactly. It is absolutely the key. Yes, if you walk away with nothing else from today besides that, that is enough. A lot of insight and further definition of trusting myself, not just trust my gut, but go with the flow rather than pressure to make a decision or people please. Show up for myself and trust myself and my journey. Yes. And when we have this foundation of the three fluencies, the discomfort advantage, discomfort is not the problem, it is the key. The somatic compass, where we have the direction that our body is pointing us in. Whole self-trust becomes inevitable because we know when discomfort shows up, it's an invitation. It is a signal that we are moving in the right direction. What that next direction is, our body can tell us. And when our body tells us, and we know that the body can't lie, it's inevitable that we can trust that whole self. It just becomes a question of whether we then take that next step fully in trust of ourselves. These together is what threshold fluency is about, because when we have these three fluencies and can move through them and navigate our way through them and trust them, when we meet a threshold, it becomes just a way of being, where we move through that threshold and we meet that threshold with presence, with curiosity, because there's signals and messages there for us, and with a sense of adventure and experience all the range of human emotions, all the range of human thoughts, all the range of physical sensations. And what a gift it is to be able to experience those things. Other takeaways: your body doesn't shut down, it points. Yeah, your body is pointing. Even when we think it's not talking to us, it is. I had a client recently say that she feels like the longer she ignores her body, or the longer anyone ignores the signals in their body and stops listening to it, then it stops talking to us. And that's actually not true. Our bodies are always talking to us. We are physical beings. We are biological creatures. We have sensations that are happening in our body all the time. It's just a matter of how tuned in we are to those sensations. And that's also why when we have spent many years not listening to our body has to scream to get our attention. Once we start paying attention, we get more and more insight and messages so that we can hear the whispers and not just wait for the screams. When I first started meditating and focusing on different parts of my body and started to feel the tingles when I focused on my big toe, I told my friend, oh my God, when I focus on my big toe, I can feel the sensation there and there's tingling and it's amazing. And then I can move it up my leg. And he was like, Danielle, that sensation is always there. You're just not paying attention to it. And that was a huge realization for me. Our bodies are talking to us all the time. We're just not paying attention to them. I wanted to share a story of one of my previous clients. When she came to me, she wasn't happy in her job, in her business, or even in her marriage. She was ignoring herself, getting more certifications. She was going on more retreats. She was traveling, and she was also coping to avoid facing the discomfort and the messages that were in her body. Together, we gave her the tools and practice to be comfortable with the discomfort so that she could reconnect with her body's innate direction and wisdom. And then step by step, start trusting her own knowing of what was best for her in her life. As we worked together, she decided that she wanted to leave her job and start her own business, and that she was not happy in her relationship and hadn't been for so long, that she wanted a divorce. She became happier and more vibrant than she had been in decades. This is the magic and the power of building threshold fluency. We trust ourselves. We start listening to the messages that are in our body, and we start seeing the signals that are all around us that we are ready to face the threshold, even if we don't necessarily know what that threshold is or where it's leading us. Our work together started with one called a threshold assessment. This is something that I share with the community because I know that we need more support and more resources to learn these tools and to get educated about what our bodies are actually asking us to do when we're moving into these thresholds. To get a sense for where you're at with these three fluencies, go to the link in my profile to book some time with me to talk about a personalized assessment of where you're at with these three fluencies. If you're curious about threshold fluency, grab some time on my calendar. Through that link, we can explore where you're at with all of this. Today was about threshold fluency, which is the term that I use for being able to meet any kind of threshold, whether that is a loss, a change in identity, a breakup, a bereavement, meeting any of those with a sense of presence, curiosity, and adventure so that you can cross through any threshold in life. Threshold fluency is the convergence of three subfluencies. As we develop them through different transitions in life, we then develop threshold fluency, and we can meet it with more curiosity and presence each time after that. The first subfluency is called the discomfort advantage. This idea that discomfort is not a problem that we need to solve. It's actually the path. It's pointing us to our next evolution. The recap of that is that discomfort is essential for us to grow. And most of us are either treating discomfort as a problem to solve by moving away from it and getting ourselves stuck, or trying to power our way through it, fix it, and overwhelming ourselves, burning ourselves out. The second fluency is the somatic compass, this idea that your body doesn't spiral, it points. Most of us live in societies where our mind is lauded and held above all else, usually to the detriment of our bodies. When we're facing change and discomfort, we tend to spiral on the hamster wheel or ruminate. And that takes us on a detour from our crossing. Our bodies know the truth already. It's just a matter of tuning in to the physical sensations that are there and pointing us in the right direction for ourselves. And I want to make that really clear. The right direction means the right direction for you and you alone. Your right direction is not going to be someone else's, and vice versa. Their right direction is not necessarily going to be yours. And that's also why developing these fluencies is so critical, because moving through change, moving through transition, and developing threshold fluency is really personal. There's no one size fits all. And we've seen that checkboxes and proven paths are not where it's at. We get burnt out, we get disillusioned, and we feel like, why am I following this path? We question it because it's not our own. Threshold fluency, as well as the three subfluencies, are practices for us to come back to our own inner truth. So the first fluency within threshold fluency is discomfort advantage. Discomfort is not the problem, it is the path. Second fluency is the somatic compass. Your body doesn't spiral, it points. The third fluency is whole self-trust. Most of us get paralyzed by self-doubt when uncertainty arises. We look outside of ourselves for direction, for validation, for our next step. What that's doing is putting us on somebody else's path, not our own. What I like to say with whole self-trust is meaning isn't out there, and it never was. Meaning is in here. When we look outside of ourselves for direction, we're giving away our meaning. We're giving away our journey back home to our path. Whole self-trust is supported by the first two fluencies. The discomfort advantage is the signal that when we learn to read it, we can then be confident in trusting and following. The Somatic Compass shows us where to lean, which direction, and how far to lean in. Because again, if we lean in too far, we might overwhelm ourselves, burn ourselves out, overwhelm our nervous systems. And if we don't lean in enough, nothing is going to change. When we can trust our body, when we can trust discomfort, we can trust our whole self. The confluence of the three fluencies is the living part. In any given crossing, you are pulling on the three fluencies in different ways. Sometimes we're leaning into discomfort advantage over the others. Sometimes we're leaning more into the somatic compass. Sometimes we're going discomfort advantage, somatic compass, back and forth until we move through what's coming up in our own systems to guide us forward. It's a living system, as well as it's called the fluency for a reason. It's fluid. It's like water. It moves in and around and within us. And that's how life is. It's not a pillar that's static. It's not a rule. It's not a law. It's a fluency, because we're moving through it. It functions like a circuit. The flow between different subfluencies seem random, but there's organization available if you allow it. There absolutely is organization here. We just don't always have access to the perspective to be able to see what that organization is. It might feel random, and it might feel like we're ping-ponging back and forth, just like that might happen in life and on our own unique paths. Each of these chapters are happening for a reason. We're gaining the experience, we're gaining the knowledge that we need in order to bring through what we were meant to bring through in our lifetimes. It might not always make sense to us. It might not always make sense to other people. And it does make sense in some way. It's in our bodies. It's somatic. It's sensory, not just in the mind. And you can probably tell that I just get fired up about this stuff and I love sharing it. Thank you for being here. It is wonderful to be with you. Hop on with me and talk more about where you're at specifically. Go to my profile and click on the link for a threshold assessment and we can connect face to face. So good to be with you. Until next time. Dear Explorer, thank you for journeying into inner space with me today. If this stirred something in you, subscribe to keep exploring with me. And if someone came to mind while listening, share this episode with them. We're not meant to navigate these edges alone. I'm Danielle, signing off with love from the edge.